I am one of your hosts, George Tarrant, alongside, as always, the man, the myth, the talent, Mr. Travis Croft. How are you, sir?
I am fine and dandy. Spring has kind of sprung here in Melbourne today. It's the warmest day we've had for a long time.
Yeah, and of course, we cannot go out and enjoy it.
Well, I said on my balcony ain't dinner. That's about as close as I'm going to get for at least another 6 weeks because our government sucks.
Yeah.
They had 2 jobs and they fucked them both up. But anyway, that said, shout out to our friends in the United States and the UK because things ain't going so well over there right now. The difference is they're like a bunch of people dying. Don't care. Whereas here it's like, wow, we're not going to let that happen. So you got to all stay home and do nothing.
Yay! And I narrowly missed a tier 2 situation at work. It was so it was on my day off that someone went there and was like, okay, well that's good. I don't have to go and get tested. But
for those who aren't aware, a tier 2 site in this state is basically, I'm not really exactly sure what the difference is, but like somebody with COVID was, within sniffing distance of their location, and you got to go get tested. You have to stay home and isolate until you get a result back, which is better than the alternative, which is a tier 1 site, whereas someone with COVID absolutely thought about going there, and they're actually in the location for, I guess, a long enough period of time where they're like, nah, everybody who was in that spot for that time has to now go home for the next 2 weeks. Doesn't matter how many negative tests you get, you got to stay home. So that is the one you want to avoid.
Exactly.
I think the audience does need an explanation. What is going on with the hair? I mean, did you lose a bet?
I did not lose a bet. I like it. Screw you. Why always the hate? First it starts off with Death Machine, then it just continuously escalates, and now it's personal jabs.
Like everyone's thinking that I was just saying what they were all thinking. We all know this is not the most extreme hair color deal you've had. You had the two-tone.
Red and
red.
blue.
But I should note that he is normally a Bulldog supporter, and the Bulldogs did have a win on the weekend. So they are red, white, and blue. But, that'll do.
Well, white skin, blue hair, red blood.
There you go. So it's all about the Bulldogs.
English, American, French, wherever.
Dutch, Russian.
Exactly.
Or from Footscray. Almost as famous.
Please, anything but that.
It was pretty posh these days.
Let's get into the show a little bit. That's true. Let's get on with the show, shall we?
Let's.
So last week, we had the delight of watching Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix. We had basically an all-star cast, essentially. And I chose to follow on with The Discovery on Netflix, a Netflix original, starring Jason Segel, Robert Redford, our Link. Her name has completely gone out of my head. What the hell is her name?
Is it Rooney Mara?
Yes. Thank you. I was thinking Noomi Rapace. Wait, is it her?
No, it was Rooney Mara plays Isla in the film. So, so did you actually watch the film? You might have noticed that Noomi Rapace wasn't in it.
I get the names mixed up on them sometimes. I'm not perfect. I'm not talented.
I think what you're going wrong is that Noomi Rapace was in the original Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, and I think Rooney Mara was in the remake of Girl with a Dragon Tattoo.
That could
There's your problem.
Yes, there we go. So, yes, we went on to the 2017 drama, pseudo-romance, pseudo-sci-fi, semi-science fiction story of the discovery, which is set 2 years after the afterlife is scientifically proven. A man attempts to help a young woman break away from her dark past. This is quite a bit of a different movie to what we have both kind of generally agree with Netflix movies of the bargain bin movies. This definitely still holds more of that independent movie feel. It's not got the same kind of production vibe to it as a lot of the other stuff. Like when you think of like sci-fi movies like Bright, the Will Smith one from a few years ago,
or the Cloverfield Paradox.
Yeah, those kinds. This has got, it definitely feels a bit more of an independent movie, because this wears its somberness right on the sleeve, right off the bat. It's a very melodramatic shot film. It's a lot of grays, very, very muted, dull colors, which makes sense given the world that it is presenting us. And it starts off with a bang, almost literally. It's a interview with the iconic Robert Redford and Mary Steenburgen, is talking about how it's the effects of having it scientifically proven that there is something after death, and how it goes on, and how it has affected so many people who are now, the suicide rate has just exploded because people are seeing it as a way out of their shitty lives or the opportunity for something better. And at the end of that interview, one of the cameramen just up and thanks Robert Redford's character, who plays as Thomas, and just shoots himself. And then it cuts to Jason Segel on a boat on his way to an undisclosed location. And it never really loses that bleakness, does it?
It's certainly not an uplifting story. And in fact, I think you've got
for a bit.
I'm here.
Ah, cool.
So are we having a delay at your end?
There's a bit of a delay. Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, it is not an uplifting film. In fact, I think you should probably whack up on the bottom of a screen. I wouldn't normally do this, but I think we do need a trigger warning, because there's going to be some fairly substantial suicidal themes to this conversation. Because so that goes out to anyone listening to the podcast as well. You know, we have a laugh in the show, but this is a legit thing, especially in the world we're living in right now. It's not exactly fun. So you're right. From that first shocking scene of a cameraman basically shooting himself in the head in the midst of a television interview, it doesn't pick up. Even as you sort of noted, the setting of the film is shot on Rhode Island in the United States, and it has a a very wintry sort of tone to it. And that doesn't. And I should note, I fucking love that because that's my jam. But some people might find that perhaps a little much for them. But I think it really suits the tone of the film, which is not exactly an uplifting one. And it's the film's greatest strength is its central premise, the central question it asks, which it does reasonably effectively. And this is a really wonderful way of doing it, actually. If it was an afterlife, if we could, if it would be, categorically, scientifically proven that there was something, life of some description after death, how would people treat that? And I suspect this film actually takes a very realistic, Black Mirror-y kind of angle on that, and says there would be a very large portion, I suspect, of people who would probably be interested in seeing if it's a better choice to go, if there's where they go next, then getting there, I think, is is not what the euphemism they use in the film is getting there, I think. And there probably would be a significant portion of people who would probably choose that, which is really a fascinating philosophical point to pause on, is to sort of go, what is it about our reality? What does it say about our reality that, you can quite easily believe people would rather, if they knew there was, an excellent chance of life, if they would choose to shoot themselves in the head or jump off a bridge or whatever, and on the outside chance that is something worth experiencing. I think it's a fascinating question, and the film does it pretty well. I really enjoyed the fact that they also explored the question very early on. Rooney Mara's character. So we should give some intro to Rooney. I'm jumping ahead, but there is actually one of the characters has a conversation with another. He says, people might actually start killing other people from a purely altruistic perspective.
Yeah.
I by killing someone, I'm doing them a favor because I'm helping them get there.
Yeah. I think this movie intelligently kind of skirts around specifics of there's no religious association with the afterlife that they put on it. It is purely the scientific element of, yes, there is something that goes on after life. And I think that's a great way of just opening it up so that it is accessible for anyone and everyone. I do think that it overall actually deals with the harsh source material of suicide and reasons why people choose suicide with a certain amount of respect as well. It doesn't trivialize anything. There's always justification for everything that we see and the actions that people have. And I think that is kind of an important thing to put onto when talking about a topic such as suicide, because it's intensely personal. And I think everyone has this point of rationalizing it. And doesn't matter how other people perceive that rationalization as, it's just that person got to that understanding. So I think it kind of applies a level of respect, which is kind of uncommon in a lot of these things. It's often when you get these movies talking about the afterlife and things like that, it either goes kind of like the Flatliners route of going full Hollywood, just this bizarre thing that happens and it has nothing to do with anything, or it goes very, very religious. And I feel like this kind of dances nicely in the middle, paying respect to, as you say, kind of that Black Mirror level of reality.
So a bit of context for the story. Our protagonist, as you sort of noted, is played by Jason Segel as Will. As you say, he's on a boat to an undisclosed location. And on the boat, he meets Isla, played by Noomi Rapace. One thing I quickly noted this here is this is the first, I think, and probably only serious role I've ever seen Jason Segel in. The only straight-ahead dramatic role I can remember him being in. And he does really, really, really well in this.
He's very subdued. Yeah, he's really, really... it's not on the same level as like when Robin Williams took on a serious role, but he just really plays it back. It's almost kind of like how unusual it felt watching The Spanish Prisoner and Steve Martin playing that not lovable goof. So like, okay, this is different, and he's doing rather well with it as well. It was a pleasant turn for Jason.
As you sort of say, he really does come across as you sort of said, a subdued manner, as a man who he's a bit dead inside, I think. He's got a deep core of pain and emptiness, I think, inside him. And we find out later on through the character's journey about why that is. But I think Jason Segel plays the character that way very well. And it is a shame you don't see a whole lot of him anymore. Like, he had 5 minutes there, 2010 to 2015, where he was really, really hot, and probably, I guess, post How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
And he's kind of faded away from sight. I mean, I'm looking now at his filmography. He has done a few things in here that are actually a little bit more serious, and maybe that explains it. Maybe he's made his money doing shitty romantic comedies now, and he's just going to do stuff that is a little more interesting to him. I also got opening of this film also had very serious Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind vibes for me. And that's not just because we had a very well-known comic actor playing a sort of a sad, serious, dramatic role, but also just the scene between Will and Isla on the ferry reminded me very much of the scene between Joel and Kate Winslet's character Clementine on the train to Montauk at the start of that film.
Well, just their whole relationship is very similar to it. It's mildly antagonistic and like jibes. I absolutely agree with that.
And they usually sort of said they don't like each other very much. And Isla's the one who sort of has the conversation. So they're going, hey, so people might start killing each other and, considering it a favor. Will is picked up at the ferry by his brother. I think it's supposed to be his brother, played by Meth Damon, a.k.a. Jesse Plemons, and they go back to the wonderful mansion where Thomas Redford has set up shop to continue his research and experiments into the afterlife. Now, having moved on to trying to create a machine that can record what happens after someone goes to the other place, for want of a better term. And when he turns up, he kind of finds that there's a whole bunch of people there, and he's kind of started his own cult. It's a little bit too Jonesy.
It's but honestly, the classic effortless cool of Robert Redford, it very much fits a cult leader because he is just calm and cool and welcoming and friendly and approachable, but very smart, and he has this gravitas, and when he talks, you do feel like you owe this guy a certain level of respect and admiration. Just, I don't know what he's saying, but I feel like I need to listen to him. He's got that attitude, and that's something that Robert Redford has always done. He's, especially getting into his older years, taken on more of that kind of mentor kind of role, and he tweaks it just a little bit to make it cultish and creepy, but also endearing, so that you can't entirely hate him. Like there's not really any villain in this, especially when it turns more of a kind of thriller element in the story in the second half, the last third of the movie. Again, like I was saying before, it gives kind of personal reasoning for the actions that happen, and I think that's the number one mandate of this movie is personal stories for each and every one of them. There's a beautiful scene between Jesse Plemons and Jason Segel, and they're just talking about how their dad, Robert Redford, just dealt with the death of their mum and the ramifications. And you get just these wonderful little snippets of just deep character work. Even the woman who plays Valerie, I think her name was Lacey. Sorry, Riley Keough. She has just these lovely little moments throughout it that just add a little bit of authenticity and sort of justification to her actions through the movie as well. That it's a very good character piece, I guess what I'm saying.
It is. At the same time, it managed to mix it up with its sort of science fiction mystery thriller elements, in the sense that partway through the story, we learn a little bit more about the machine that Thomas has built to record what happens after the afterlife. And we find out that Will has actually been sabotaging it. It's such a bad idea that he sabotages it, but in doing so, finds out that it actually works.
Yeah.
He sets him off on a course to try and track down. They actually steal a corpse and record some what if we think is the afterlife, and they sets them off on a bit of a mystery, a bit of a hunt to try and figure out this man's story, to try and verify what they're seeing. Is it reality? Is it a memory? What is it? And then there's actually one of my favorite parts of a film is when they come to the conclusion and he tells them, hey, it works. And the three of them actually, so Robert Redford's character, Jesse Plemons, and Jason Segel's character all look at each other and go, we've got to destroy this thing. No one can find out this works. And it's a really nice moment where the film goes to a fairly inconvenient place for its story, but at the same time goes with your logic is to go, oh, fuck, if people knew, not only could they scientifically prove it, we never say exactly how that is, but they can see, video or recorded of where they're going after, forget about it, right? Like, why would it would be a global catastrophe. So that's it's really nice the film actually thinks about what it's going to do, and actually the writer of the film has thought about it and gone, okay, yeah, this is a logical step for it to take. And as you say, we're kind of being set up all the way through the film for Robert Redford to be the bad guy, to be a villain of some kind. But this is the moment where you realize he's actually not a villain. He's just a scientist. He's just curious, which is probably a good thing for most scientists, one would imagine, to ask questions and investigate things. But in this case, that's all he is, and he's not actually doing it for any kind of personal gain or to, he can actually see the consequences of his actions, and you sort of go, okay, well, he's not a bad guy here. So the bad guy is the situation.
And it does give you the kind of the double bluff as well. There's a point where Jason and Jesse's characters are talking, and as Jesse Plemons' character, Toby, I think it is, leaves, he throws the line away of "Dad always comes round. He always does." And so often in that kind of in Hollywood movies, that kind of line leads to, okay, he's going to go full bad guy. It's that red herring, but they sort of like, no, he actually does come round. He does come round to it. He sees the magnitude of what he has proven, and he does in my personal opinion, he does the more honorable, righteous thing of attempting to destroy it. At a point where it actually does give him almost a level of closure for the shit that he's working out with as well. So it's a nice way of kind of him buttressing up against a wall that in so many stories, the scientists would just slam through it and keep on going, and it would just balloon out and get more ridiculous. He reaches the line and stops. And I think that's an important message to actually have in movies from time to time, of knowing the limit.
And it's kind of unusual that the film doesn't take an easier way out. It's a more challenging, interesting way out. I'm very surprised at how poorly rated this film is. It has a 54 on Metacritic. That is drastically low. Like, it's not a masterpiece. It's not perfect. But it's certainly better than a 54. Some people just maybe were having a bad day, or Netflix forgot their check for the reviewer. Their brown paper bag of cash wasn't around the back for them to give it a fresh rating like some films get. Go Bosses. But it has an audience score of 6.3, which isn't, well, it's probably closer to a mark than a 54. But probably doesn't quite rate it. I was really impressed by this, but where I think people may have lost people is with the ending. The ending does get okay. So you should put the spoil. Well, do you want to put spoilers up? I can spoilers. We're trying to spoil it for you.
It's a couple of years old. Spoilers. There we go.
The twist ending, because you kind of knew. I was curious. I was sitting there watching a twist ending and going, I bet George figured this out beforehand with his superpower. Did you?
Yeah.
Yes.
As soon as the first thing, as soon as it cuts to Jason on the ferry at the beginning of the movie, it's like, okay, I see where this is a loop. Boom.
In the first scene.
Yeah.
What gave it away?
Water is always regularly used as something to elicit flow and flowing of time and things like that. It is a symbol of that, but it's also the fact that everything in that scene is designed to posit the what if question. Him turning off the TV, him choosing to go and have a conversation with Isla. And then everything from interactions with her in the car park is all about the what if. And it's like, okay, they're going to come back to this. They're going to revisit this. I can see what they're going to do. And they did it well. But I spoiled movies for myself.
You do. You do. I was going to criticize you for that. But then again, I do it. I saw it. One of the films I'll talk about a little later on. I found myself doing it less successfully. Anyway, so but I was like, as soon as I saw the anime, I guarantee you George has ruined this movie for himself. I wasn't quite picking you would have done it during the first scene, but you would have done it anyway, so you might as well get it out of the way quickly because I didn't. I was busy enjoying it. Fortunately, I didn't have that.
I still enjoyed it. I still very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, because you must be used to it now, because you've always had this for your whole life. You can just still enjoy a film despite knowing what's going to happen. I found the ending a little confusing. It was a little bit rushed. It wasn't a bad ending. So, as George has indicated, we find out at the end of a film, Jason Segel's character has been dead the whole time. The Sixth Sense ending. And that what we've experienced has been his afterlife. And that the insinuation is the afterlife for each person is kind of a quantum leap type situation where you're put back into a part of your life where you have to work through a situation until you resolve it. At which point, don't know, but that's the movie.
I think that overall it earned the ending that it had, but I think that it did also try and just push a little bit beyond its means. And I was saying earlier on about Thomas kind of hitting that line in the sand, so to speak, and just not pushing through it. I think the movie itself tried to be a little bit more intelligent than what it had set itself up for before, but at the same time, I don't know quite how they could have finished this movie any other way. But it didn't shake the movie and didn't ruin it for me at all. It was just, it just felt a little strained.
A little bit. I just sort of found myself going, hang on. You're saying a lot of things very, very, very quickly. And they needed to slow that whole thing down. Massively slow it down. Because, it was very easy. I'm guessing, okay, it's a looper. He's dead. I got it. But, you're saying all these things very, 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 very quickly. You're throwing information at me. And it's like, fuck, we've run out of money. Finish. Right? It was...
it's never a good sign when it's a big exposition dump. And that was essentially an exposition dump at the end of the movie, which that's never a good sign of good storytelling.
No. It's... Yeah, what do you make of the stuff with a little boy on the beach and all that kind of bizzo?
I think that was the most ham-fisted kind of element of the movie. It makes sense to a point, but I don't know if they really needed it.
I found it, again, it was maybe one idea too many. It was balancing a lot of ideas, had a lot of balls in the air. And it did it pretty well. It was sort of been hinting at all the way through. But it just the idea of it. So one of the subplots is that he talks about when he was a young boy, having had a near-death experience, and, he saw somebody else when he was in, when his heart had stopped or whatever. And it's somehow indicated that what he was seeing was Isla's son, who is there at the end of the movie or something. I found that whole thing confusing and uninteresting, and I didn't get added anything to the story.
Yeah, I think it muddied the waters when, as you say, they were juggling a lot of balls already, and they weren't exactly helium-filled balloons that they were juggling. This is about suicide, and this is about the afterlife, and in a twisted way, alternate realities / timelines. Those aren't exactly easy balls to juggle at the best of times. So I do feel like it made the movie work harder than it needed to. I think.
I agree. It didn't add much, but yeah. I think this is possibly the best Netflix movie I've seen. It's a stat. What made you pick this? Was it just you hadn't seen it before? Was there something about it that interested you?
I hadn't seen it before. I love Robert Redford as an actor, and Jason Segel. I've always enjoyed him in his comedy stuff, and he's always someone who in the stuff that he writes and produces, he always tries to put something a little different on it. So seeing him in something that's a bit more independent, that idea pleased me as a concept, but also the notion of suicide and the afterlife. That's something that I write about in my stuff, and I'm I have a lot of thoughts on suicide as well, having had those thoughts myself and kind of worked through a lot of that a lot of times. It's a topic that I think needs to be talked about because there's still so much stigma about it. So having a movie on a mass platform like Netflix, I feel like it was a worthwhile personal kind of connection for me, as well as just being a movie that I hadn't seen.
One thing you sort of noted there is like one thing when you're dealing with American films is there's a great deal of self-censorship in American cinema these days, in the sense of things you can and you can't do. So it's very difficult to make a film that's overtly critical of organized religion. I think of a thing like The Golden Compass. Well, a film wasn't necessarily actually critical, but the book it was based on was. And so that film got absolutely chopped off at the knees from being the next Lord of the Rings, despite being a pretty good movie, because all the religious nuts over there said, "Don't go and see it; it's anti-religious." Or the Darren Aronofsky Noah film, I remember that was a lot of blowback. I know a friend of mine in the States who just happens to be a Trump supporter. Shocking, I know. Said she wouldn't go and see it because her pastor had told her it wasn't biblically accurate. I'm like, what the fuck was that mean? Like, do you think you really built a boat? What? So
just want to see the bouncer on that boat. It's like, is your name on the list? Fuck off.
Unicorns. Fuck off, unicorns. So yeah, when I was in the States once, I did go past a billboard for the Ark Experience, where the Australian guy Ken Ham actually has built a life-size replica of the actual Noah's Ark. It's in Kentucky. I would love to go there one day. But it's difficult. Even though that film wasn't particularly overtly anti-religious, it was just not quite what the religious right in that country. A little bit more challenging than, say, Passion of a Christ. So this film is dealing with, as you sort of noted, it deals with the topic of suicide quite heavily. And as you noted earlier, it does not deal with it in remotely a religious way. Religion doesn't come into this at all.
Yeah.
So they're very delicately stepped through that minefield. They're not being overtly anti-religious. So I guess maybe the religious folks might think it is because it doesn't talk about heaven. But I'll leave that for them to criticize. But at the same time, they can be incredibly, I'm criticizing our American friends, we're just as bad here, but they are very moralistic about things. Hence, talking about something as distasteful as suicide, pretty controversial thing to do. And again, this film has delicately tiptoed through and got a very interesting story on the books about that topic, or at least deals heavily with that topic. And you have to wonder, if we didn't have Netflix, something like this almost certainly would never have been made.
I feel like it probably would have been made, because the trailer for this shows that it got some laureates for some independent movie premieres, and I think it was one that was purchased later on by Netflix for distribution. So it was going to be made, but having it, I think being able to get something as sensitive of a subject as this on film and picked up by a mass distributor is rare. I mean, you can just ask any independent movie maker, and they're desperate for people to see their movies, and getting it up on Netflix or Amazon or any of the platforms is a big boon. But I think that it's important for challenging cinema to still exist in the mainstream in some form or another. That's one of the things that I have a problem with all the purchases that Disney has, and there's talks that Disney are going to buy Sony Pictures so that they can get all the Spider-Man rights and all of that stuff. It's homogenizing the cinema industry. And it's going to breed vanilla cinema.
Well, in some ways, we have. Sometimes I think the same thing. If you're talking, the big studios, we have less voices than ever before because we're at 3 now. But at the same time, we actually, I would think, one would probably argue we get more voices now than ever before because you've got those streaming services gagging for content. So you got Netflix, Prime, Disney. It's called lump Disney with the rest of it, but you got Hulu in the States, Paramount Plus in the States, Apple. They're all doing original content. Sometimes mainly TV. There's some feature films in there as well. So if you've got a half decent idea and you're moderately talented, I think you have a better chance of your stuff being seen now than ever before. No matter what Disney does.
That's fair. That's fair. I do still also think that most of the time, the studios, regardless of whether they are for your classic cinema release stuff or your digital platforms, they are just getting more and more laser focused on finding the next big thing.
That's certainly true. That's certainly true. I mean, that
is the difficult balance that they have to work out.
I guess it probably helps. It's a little bit like music. Like a few years ago, I remember when Radiohead put out their album and they said, pay whatever you want. And it turned out when they were giving their album away for free, they actually made a shit ton of money because by able to do that, they were able to cut out the record company. And so even if only 50%, even if 10%, I don't know how many people paid the money for it, all of that money went to Radiohead. None of it went to a record label. So even, saving 90% of people paying nothing for their record or whatever it was, they still made a very reasonable amount of money.
Archimedes, come on. There you go.
It's our co-host.
He's being restless tonight.
So maybe it's the same sort of thing here in a sense that, what I was going to say is that where that ended up was that it ended up benefiting established acts. Probably most of all, if you are a Radiohead, if you are a 9 Inch Nails, you can afford to put an album up for free. It's going to pay whatever you want, or free, but you've got to pay me. Here's all the extras. You want the vinyl copy, you want the deluxe box edition. People are going to do that if you're a Radiohead or 9 Inch Nails. But if you're Joe Bloggs and the Blogsters, right? You just play independent band gigging around, no one's ever heard of. That's not going to really work for you because you've got to eat, and no one's going to pay extra for. You can't afford to create it, the extra packaging or whatever it is. So maybe it's the same sort of thing here in cinema, whereas the free music thing kind of did end up having a benefit to established acts. If you're an established filmmaker, if you're a Martin Scorsese, if you're a Quentin Tarantino, if he decided after 10 films he doesn't want to do features anymore, he wants to do TV series. And he puts himself out to market there. Can you imagine? What an Amazon or a Netflix would pay to produce Quentin Tarantino's first original TV series or whatever it is he starts to do next? I mean, the guy could basically name his price. If Chris Nolan decided he wants to start doing something in streaming, I think you might have read that he is. Those sort of guys can command a premium, but if you're straight out of film school, maybe it's just as hard as ever.
All right, So that's our thoughts on The Discovery on Netflix, available now. Check it out if you're not too sensitive to hard subject matter. But Travis, the keys to the kingdom are yours. What are you taking us to next?
This was a difficult choice in a way because there's a lot of different ways out of this. I
You're going to hurt me, aren't you?
No, I don't do that. Not unless you break the rules. You know what
fuck off.
No, what the rules are, and they're not to be broken. I've decided to follow Robert Redford, which is, because I kind of want to. We looked at some fairly recent films, so I thought this at least open up the spectrum to some older stuff. I did consider sticking to something in the last 10 years. And I did actually would have been very curious to hear your thoughts on All Is Lost, which is a film from 2013. We're not going to do All Is Lost, by the way, for one reason. Okay. There's nobody else in it except for Robert Redford. It's literally just Robert Redford on the screen for an hour and 46 minutes. And that's what makes it wonderful. But you'd have the director as the only way out then, and that would be a little bit hard, even though he has done some interesting stuff. But that would be a little bit limiting. We'd be kind of painting ourselves into a corner a little bit here. So I've decided to make life a little easier for you next week, but at the same time, keep up the quality. I think with something that is very highly lauded and something that I haven't actually seen before myself. So we're going to have a look at the 1980 Oscar-winning classic Ordinary People. Directed by Robert Redford. It is a drama. The accidental death of the older son of an affluent family deeply strains the relationships amongst the bitter mother, the good-natured father, and the guilt-ridden son. Now, I should note, this is not the kind of film I would normally choose. There's absolutely nothing about that synopsis that says, wow, you're going to enjoy this film. But it does have a 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb. It has an 86 Metascore. It won 4 Oscars. I think this show is good for nothing if we're not challenging, our perceptions occasionally as well as our audience. I have not
seen this movie before either, so it is a great opportunity.
It is available to rent on your Amazons, your Googles, your Microsofts, your YouTubes, your Fetches, your Apple TVs. Of course, Apple charge extra before you experience,
It's because it's 10% more sweet than the next leading brand.
I was going to say, Tim Cook comes on the screen first and jerks you off before you get. That's your extra $1 worth there for Google, for Apple. Like, seriously,
pay more for Tim Cook to not touch their junk.
I think it's actually. I think it's because it's in HD. It says it's in HD, so maybe that's why. HD costs extra. But it's available to rent around a place. It should be fairly widely available. And as you have a quick look at the cast there, some pretty well-known faces in there, Donald Sutherland's and that kind of thing. So I'm sure you'll be able to figure out something interesting to do with that.
I've already got an idea of where I think I want to
go. Yes. Yeah. So
I'm going to be going back.
I mean, it's a quality production here, so
yes,
it's
going to be good, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be good.
Look, this is a classic, I think. So, Robert Redford is a decent director. Feel free to watch it. Won Best Picture, by the way, and Best Director in 1980. So
there you go.
Academy, there you go. The Academy usually has something interesting to pick. So, that said, they did pick Shakespeare in Love, but don't mention the war.
They also pick Forrest Gump over Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that rounds off our chain movie of the week, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Travis has had difficulty finding access to the latest What If. So I'm just going to give like a brief little thoughts on What If right now. No spoilers, nothing at all. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but this one is focusing entirely on Stephen Strange and the possibility. The title is "What If Stephen Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands?" And it's an interesting hypothesis, and the way that it presents it, it's almost ends up being a what if in a what if episode. It deals with the notion of loss in overall a good way for an animated, primarily focused for kids show, because it is a tough subject matter for some, for sure. It'll be challenging to watch. I think this one is going to be quite a dividing episode. But it does also further highlight what we've been talking about in the past episodes about the animation of this. And the animation is very, in this episode, more than any other, it highlights, because there is a lot of difference between these quieter kind of conversation moments and then action sequences. The animation is designed, the look of it is designed to make the animation action look good. And it does look really good. But in those quieter moments, in those more story beat moments, it is ugly, frankly. It is an ugly looking animation style, which is a shame, because what they are trying to do in this grows like what we've seen in the first 3 episodes. The maturity of how they're utilizing this what if scenario is good. I approve of it. So I can't wait to hear what you think about it next week, Rose. And anyone else, I do recommend you watch it. But if you have young kids that you are going to watch this with, just be cautious, because it does deal with the notion of loss in typical ways. And hopefully it's a little bit of an indicator of what we might get kind of tone-wise for Sam Raimi's take on Stephen Strange as well, because it does take a darker turn. But I think overall, it's another good one. It's another win.
Good deal. I look forward to it. It's what you get when you don't have a Disney Plus subscription. Again, I will not pay for another subscription.
There are too many of them.
Please remove 3. Thereafter, we talked about Paramount Plus last week. What a temptation that's been over the last week. You know, watch new episodes.
When you actually look at the content, no.
New episodes of iCarly. How could you say that?
Quite easily.
I think it's time for a word from our sponsor.
Yes, our sponsors. Yes. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to use the code when you check out with any of these adverts on their website. Is to Armchairs21, and you'll get yourself a 76% discount. But we've got a few sponsors this week. So we will just be back.
It will be a few sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by Furniture World. Enjoy
Furniture World.
Furniture World, and we're going to go over here and
then
Furniture World Supermarket Saba, one of the largest furniture retailing and manufacturing organizations in Victoria. Over 2 acres of high-quality furniture and bedding on display. Lounge suites, bedroom suites, kitchen and dining fittings, wall units and occasional furniture. Also a large range of office furniture, all at heavily reduced prices, no reasonable offer refused. Furniture World Supermarket Saba will offer you 6 months interest-free terms, bank card, plus free delivery anywhere in Victoria. Furniture World Supermarket Saba, the name you can trust. Furniture World Supermarket Saba, Frankston Road, Dandenong, 1 kilometre past Dandenong Town Hall, just off Princess Highway. Phone 791-3522. Call and say hello to Dave and Mabel at Furniture World Saba.
Hello, Cocky. I got the blues on my birthday, and they're the best things I got.
They're fast, furious, fascinating. But wouldn't you like to take a closer, more revealing look? Now, page by page, week by week, the world's most exciting aircraft, past, present and future, are examined in amazing detail and brought to life in the most comprehensive publication of its kind ever compiled. The Illustrated Encyclopedia of Aircraft. Don't miss part 1, on sale now.
If you thought the latest top-quality men's fashions cost an arm and a leg, take a closer look at Roger David. Take a closer look at the style, at the fabrics, the workmanship. Take a closer look at Roger David's range. Comfortably affordable fashion you'd expect to pay a fortune for anywhere else. If you thought the quality and fashionability of our menswear was less than the best, just because our prices are so low, take a closer look at Roger David.
Saba, the largest name in furniture, with over 30 years' experience in manufacturing of high-quality lounge suites, invite you to call and purchase your furniture at near wholesale prices. Save by buying direct from the maker. Over 40 different designs and 200 different fabrics and colours to choose from. Saba will offer you 6 months interest-free terms and free delivery anywhere in Victoria, plus a 5-year written guarantee. No reasonable offer refused. Saba, manufactured for your comfort. Saba, the largest name in furniture. Available only from the new 3.5-acre Saba Furniture Exhibition and Sales, corner Frankston and Greens Roads, Dandenong. Furniture World Supermarket, Saba, Frankston Road, Dandenong. Saba, a wonderful world of furniture, open daily until 5:30 and till 9 p.m. every Thursday and Friday.
MST is first for sport. Hurry into the Melbourne Sports Depot, Elizabeth Street, for your sporting needs. Adidas Summit jogging and training shoes in burgundy. A great sale price, only $19.99. Converse nautical and deck shoes.
And we are back.
And we're back. That was the, if you're looking for a green velour couch, Saba Furniture World is the place to stop and have a look.
And
I know
Saba will accept any reasonable offer.
Any reasonable offer, especially $1982. So that's going to go down very well. For that green velour couch, you've always wanted to would do need a new couch, so that'll work out well.
Yes,
76% discount down there at the Saba Furniture World and Furniture in Frankston. Just make sure you lock your doors before you get out of the car. It is Frankston after all.
Make sure when you get to Frankston, you don't get out of your car and you drive on.
Well, yeah, it's kind of the end of the world. So there's a great line in on the beach, the 50s film shot here, and they're like, "Oh, I live in a little village down the coast called Frankston."
I like the other line about the production of that. It's like, if you're going to shoot the end of the world, Australia is the place to do it.
No, in particular was apparently the place to do it. Apparently that's apocryphal, though. That is the word in the street. It was made up. Apparently Ava Gardner didn't really say that.
Yeah.
So I am told.
Well, now
I wasn't there, believe it or not. I wasn't born.
No, you were not there. You were not even a twinkle in the eye.
I think my dad might have been 3 years old when they made that film here. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, shall we move on?
Let's.
Okay. Where are we going to go to? Do you want to talk about The Secret in Their Eyes, or shall I do my roundup for brand new cherry flavor?
Let's talk cherry flavor. I know you were really impressed by that last week.
Yeah. So, I finished watching season 1 of They Certainly Leave It Open for more seasons. Didn't end how I thought it was going to end. They took some good twists and turns. I didn't predict the ending, so that's impressive. I will definitely give them points for that, for sure. Overall, everything more or less stuck the landing in a Twin Peaksy-like manner. I think it's a worthwhile show. I think it offers something a little different. It blends a little bit of the younger generation witchcrafty kind of thing that's been very popular in shows like Sabrina, and sort of like the originals and those supernatural kind of shows where they've brought a little bit more sex and subtle erotica to things. This is not an erotic show at all. In fact, it very much trivializes and just makes everything a bit creepy. But it's got, the attractive young lead. It's got a lot of stuff just playing with that. There's always this slight air of sexuality to it because it's all about power plays, and I find power sexy. Powerful people are sexy. can't deny it.
You heard it here first. He found Donald Trump sexy.
Well, if you want an imprint on the cushions after pounding him from the orange, yeah.
Now, Henry Kissinger was fond of saying a power was the world's greatest aphrodisiac. And if you've ever seen a photo of Henry Kissinger, you'd know he knows exactly. You get to find out firsthand about aphrodisiacs.
Anytime, sorry, as soon as anyone says Henry Kissinger, I think of the Futurama version of him, where he's just awful.
I feel like you can't take Nixon seriously after Zombie Nixon.
Riddled with phlebitis. But back onto Brand New Cherry Flavor. I really did enjoy it, and it's definitely got room and growth in the story and development to warrant another season if they wanted to do it. But at the same time, it's kind of cool if they do leave it just the way that they leave it, because it's like, okay, and then they went off, and I think that kind of really epitomizes a lot of the artistic industry in LA, where people will come in, they will have that blast of 5 minutes of fame, 15 minutes of fame, and then they disappear, and there's always that story of where are they now? And it would kind of fit with the character of LA that they portray in the show. But I do recommend this show if anyone is interested in something that's a bit twisted, a bit scary, supernatural elements, great performances all around, and largely very entertaining as well.
I think they're probably worth mentioning, as you said last week, it's some pretty disturbing shit happening in this show, though, right?
Yeah, there's some pretty fucked up stuff, like vomiting kittens, as in vomiting up kittens, not kittens vomiting. There's beheadings, there's blood magic, there's sex magic, there's it's just and there's like the uncomfortable. It does very much play because it's a period piece. It's set in sort of like the 90s, and it's very much the attitude of one of the producers in the show. They very much play into the sexual predator atypical role, but the shit that his life gets burnt down around him, even that's kind of brutal. And even the characters themselves do posit the question, have I gone too far? And I think it balances rather nicely. It's entertainment first and foremost. This is not a genuine appraisal of sexual predation in the movie industry or anything like that. It is using that as a catalyst for something else. So its primary focus is entertainment rather than education, but it does the entertainment very well, and it makes you feel uncomfortable with the bits that you're supposed to feel uncomfortable about, where they are very much still problems in society today. But I enjoy it.
But probably just want to be careful of, again, if you have young kids,
yes,
or you are of a particularly sensitive disposition. This is maybe one that, despite George's strong endorsement, might not tick all the boxes for you. It might be one just to go and watch another episode of A Good Place or something.
Absolutely.
Speaking of A Good Place, I watched the latest episode of 9 Perfect Strangers on the weekend. I know there's a lot of people being really critical of this show. They are wrong, and I don't know what they're talking about. Unless they've seen more episodes than me.
Okay.
Yeah. The reason why I'm saying it, speaking of The Good Place, there is a common actor in that show. I think we talked about it last week, actually. I think is he in new cherry flavor. He might have been anyway. We mentioned that last week.
Oh, yes, he is.
And he plays Yao in the actor's name, but anyway, he plays Manny Jacinto. He plays Yao in Nine Perfect Strangers. Ironically, he's Filipino. Keeps getting stuck with these other Asian characters, but I won't spoil it too much because it's hard. I'm probably going to come back to this probably at the end of the 8th episode rather than give you a week by week update. Other than to say that if you've been put off by the bad reviews in the newspapers to say it's not good, I've got absolutely no idea what those reviewers are watching and how they're making up their minds that the show's no good before the end. It's still it's fascinating. There's some revelations in episode 4. Take this story in some interesting new directions and really open the story up a little bit more, and we learn a little bit more about some of the characters again. It's not giving us any easy answers yet, but then again, it's an 8-episode run. What 8-episode run would be giving you answers in episode 4? I've got no fucking idea what the newspaper reviewers are on about. No, it isn't telling us anything. It's just all asking questions. Of course, it's still asking questions. We're halfway through the series. So again, I'm just blown away by the level of the acting on display here. Particularly standouts in the show for me: Michael Shannon, Asher Ketty, and Bobby Cannavale, who are just blowing me away with their performances in the show. Nicole Kidman is phoning a whole thing in with a really bad Russian accent and some really bad Botox and plastic surgery. Like, she should just let nature take its course, mate. But it doesn't hold us back from this being something that's. They just keep planting little seeds, going, we're going to do this, we're going to give it a treatment, little things, and you're like, I'm really excited to see the next episode. So if you've been put off by the bad reviews in the newspapers, tell them to go and get fucked, because it's got a 7.4 on IMDb. I'm really liking it. It's now. This is all going to hinge on one thing, though, is the ending. Right? Like, it's all well and good to set up. We've all seen it done a million times. Let's set up a really cool, mysterious premise. Lots of, enigmatic characters doing enigmatic shit. And then, I don't know what's going to happen at the end. You know what I mean? Like, we do a Lost, where we don't tell you anything. Or...
Oh, we don't know what they're doing. We don't know where they are. And the writers are going, shit, neither do we.
Or what was that? Wayward Pines? You remember that one? From a few years ago.
Was great.
Season 1 was great until the end. And you're like, yeah, I don't know about that. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And then season 2 was just a... yeah, best not mention that. It's like possibly the worst season 2. The worst season 2 of a follow a great season 1 since Heroes.
We're going to go over here now.
Yeah, it's just awful. But yeah, if it has an ending like that, it's going to ruin the whole thing. But we don't know yet because we haven't seen. At least I haven't. I mean, unless the people writing the reviews in the papers have, and it sucks. It's based on a book at least, so it's not based on what Damien Lindelof had for breakfast yesterday morning and shat out today. Which I think is actually how the last few seasons of Lost were written.
Script ideas from the series.
I think that's how Damien Lindelof came up with the script.
There's a message in my alphabets.
I would just turn a can of alphabet soup upside down and then we freestyle it. So it's got an actual source material. I haven't read the book, but I recommend if you got Prime, check it out. If you don't have Prime, as it's in Australia, of course, and you want to sign up for a free trial, because we're going to be here for at least another month, people, at least here in Melbourne and Sydney. So that's something. You got 4 or 5 episodes to be up by now. So there's a little bit of content for you. If you're in the States, it's on Hulu over there. I don't know where it is everywhere else in the world, but I'm sure it'll be on a streaming service near you, or you could just torrent it, because let's face it, the actors have already been paid. I think the payment was actually going to Byron Bay in the middle of a pandemic, so it looks incredible, frankly. I found myself watching this other night going, I want to go wherever that place is. It looks cool. And you know me, I don't like the countryside.
Nope. It's true. The times that you have been to the countryside, God has tried to smite you.
Well, yeah, tried is the operative word.
It's true. He can't stop us. All right. So that was an update on
Nine Perfect
Strangers. So where do you want to go now? Do you want to talk about Secrets in Their Eyes?
I'm going to talk a little about Secret
Murders in the Building.
The Secret in Their Eyes. So this is another one of these. We did this a few weeks ago where I did a side-by-side and we talked about an Argentine film I watched called Nine Queens, which has been nominated for Best Foreign Picture. And then it was remade in the States a few years later as Criminal, with starring John C. Reilly. So I'm going to do that again. So I was put onto Secret in Their Eyes, which is the latest film in what I'm calling the DCU, the Dain Cinematic Universe, because this stars Ricardo Dain in the starring role. If you don't know who that is, he's the Argentinian George Clooney. He was the star of Nine Queens, which I just mentioned. He was in Heroic Losers, which I saw a couple of months ago in a cinema. He seems kind of a distant memory again. And I was put on the list by my girlfriend, Michelle, who has Argentinian heritage, who is busily writing her psychology essay this evening on wisdom. And she should be working and not, well, she should be listening to us, obviously, but, you know, it's probably more constructive too. She's doing some work. So, you know, good luck with that. But she did put me under this film. The film did win the Academy Award for Best Foreign Picture in 2009. The Secret in Their Eyes, a retired legal counselor writes a novel hoping to find closure for one of his past unresolved homicide cases and for his unreciprocated love with his superior, both of which still haunt him decades later. And I don't think there's any exaggeration here to say this film is a flat-out masterpiece in every step of the way.
Okay.
Direction, writing, cinematography, the acting's choice. I don't think it's rated 148 in the IMDb 250, top 250, and that's well deserved. Ironically, I think the IMDb 250 is actually probably a very good measure of the quality of a film, right? You don't just sneak in there, but not so much shit in that top 250. So essentially, we saw Ricardo Dain stars as Benjamin Esposito. He was a prosecutor or an investigator for the a legal counsel, they call it. Couldn't quite figure out exactly the nature of his profession. He worked for like the DP, Department of Public Prosecutions, that we might call it in Australia, or the district attorney, the Americans might call it. You might need a little bit more familiarity with the Argentine legal system to exactly locate his job, but he was kind of an investigator kind of guy. And one of his jobs when he was actually in private, when he was a legal counselor, was to investigate a rape and murder of a beautiful young woman in Buenos Aires. And it's called the Morales case because the deceased's surname was Morales. And the first thing you think of usually when the wife gets murdered is it's going to be the husband. But this film goes a different direction. It turns out her husband, played by Pablo Rago, who plays Ricardo Morales, is absolutely heartbroken at the loss of his wife. They don't really have a whole lot of trouble finding out who it was. They quickly find out it was a drifter / construction worker called Isidora Gomez, who was living nearby, but he somehow slips their grasp. You know, for a series of misadventures, he manages to slip away before they can arrest him. And they're unable to sort of locate him after that. This moves into one of the most beautiful scenes in a film I think I've ever seen, where one day Benjamin Esposito, Ricardo Dain, is going through a local train station and he sees Ricardo Morales sitting in the foyer of a train station. And he goes over and talks to him, you know, introduces himself. He's, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "I'm looking for the killer." And he goes, "You know, I've come here every day for a year to look at the faces to see if I spot the killer." And I'm not doing it justice to say, but like this, you know, it really touches Benjamin Esposito as well. And he's like, "I've never seen such love for someone in somebody's eyes before." Abbott and the chase for the killer sort of continues on. So we've got this 2-track story. At the same time, we're flashing forward to the future, where 13 years later, Esposito has started writing this novel about the Morales case, and is now revisiting his old colleagues, having retired some years before, including his former boss, Irene Menendez Hastings, played by Soledad Villamil. And I'm probably mangling that pronunciation, so I will apologize.
The chat is ablaze with insults for your pronunciation.
So she'll be listening too. She's a regular listener, I'm sure. We're very big in Argentina. I assume she's Argentinian. I don't actually know. I should have checked that first. She is Argentinian. Phew. So he's visiting them, and sort of he's decided to write this novel. And he's sort of waking up the case again to try and chase down Isidora. Sort of digging up that dirt of the past. Now, so it's got a bit of time jumpy. It's got some romance elements in there. It's got this police procedural element in there. It's got some serious questions about crime and punishment and what justice is. The nature of love, and the nature of loss for the husband whose wife died. It has the best foot chase scene I have ever seen in cinema history, period, done. I haven't seen a chase scene like this before. It is brilliant. It is to foot chase scenes what the car chasing Bullet was a few weeks ago. It's that good.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's brilliant. The camera work is insane. The technical details of this film are insane. So we spot between, the jump back and forwards for 10 years or thereabouts between when the murder takes place and the older Esposito having written his book. And I think that rather than using any of the Marvel de-aging technology, which we see so popular today, they've kind of done the opposite actually, and they've gone, they've aged up Ricardo Dayin with some makeup to make him look older. And the same with Soledad Villamil when he goes back to visit them. And Pablo Rago as Morales, he comes back into the story later on. And the makeup, I mean, how often do you hear me talk about the makeup? Like, you just don't. Like, I'm too stupid to notice things like makeup, That just goes over my head like, explosions, good. That's about the level of detail you get from me doing film reviews. That's trust me. But, but the makeup in this was insane. Like it was so seamless. Like you're cutting back and forward, but the film didn't need to be like 10 years later. You just knew from what the way that they looked that you were now seeing older versions of the same characters, and that seemed incredibly natural. And it was done beautifully. And I can't imagine this film was done on a great budget either. I don't know what a budget of a film in the late 2000s. Here we go. An estimated budget of $2 million.
How much?
It's scandalous how good this film is for $2 million. Like a film looks like it. Look, I was going to say it looks like $1 million. It actually looks like $2 million. But a significantly more expensive Hollywood thriller would be very, very happy to look this good. So I can't recommend this film highly enough. I don't want to give too much away because I would very much like our friends out there who are listening to try and find a copy if they can. I can tell you, if you're an Australian listener, you're just going to have to steal it because it's not available to stream in Australia. Maybe you might find a shiny plastic disc somewhere. Don't know. I had to play a shiny plastic disc in my Xbox the other day, and I realized it didn't work. So, that's not. It wouldn't play the audio. It was really annoying.
Huh,
We'll play the menu audio. When I started the movie, it wouldn't play the movie audio. It's very, very frustrating.
That's your thoughts on the original.
I was going to say,
now, you said that this was a 2-for-1 deal. You watched the remake.
I've done a side by side. This was remade in 2015.
How much of this review reflects in the remake?
Not much. It was remade in 2015 in the United States as a secret in their eyes. It's funny. It's got a very high-profile cast. So we had Chiwetel Ejiofor as Ray Carson, who is essentially Ricardo Daín's character. Nicole Kidman as his boss, so Soledad Villa, whatever her name was. We have Julia Roberts as Jessica Cobb, essentially filling the role of Morales. We have Dean Norris shortly after his fame in, of course, Breaking Bad. Alfred Molina, Michael Kelly. You know who Michael Kelly is? Look him up. You know his face. He's in things, and he's always the bad guy. So really high profile cast. This film is made for 10 times the budget, so almost $20 million. So actually, it's probably pretty cheap, really, considering you've got, 2 Oscar winners in your starring roles in Kidman and Roberts there. But I don't know, maybe they're a little bit past their best work. So very high. The thing is, I'd never even heard of this film before. I don't remember it coming out back in the day. So it didn't get a lot of publicity.
I do remember the name and the poster, but I certainly never watched it. I don't really do Nicole Kidman stuff anymore. She's not really pushed herself in a long, long time.
That's a good point. This is written and directed by, obviously the adaptation was written and it was directed by Billy Ray, who's not a bad director. He wrote Captain Phillips, Shattered Glass, the first Hunger Games film, Dark Fate, Terminator. Let's not mention that one. He also
done overall a lot of good writing stuff, but he did also do Gemini Man and Terminator: Dark Fate.
I wonder
so it's a bit patchy.
Which Gemini Man he did, right? Because Gemini Man had been kicking around Hollywood for a long time.
That's very fair.
He did direct also the TV miniseries The Comey Rule, which was the adaptation of James Comey's book about Donald Trump, which we talked about on the show probably about a year ago, which I really liked. And so not a bad director either. But the adaptation, it's a little bit like Criminal. I mean, when you it's an interesting. You can't really get into it here because we probably don't have the time, and I'm not the right person to do it. You pick up a story out of its original cultural context and whack into a completely different culture. I don't know that it makes sense anymore. So everything about this story made sense in Argentina in the time period in which it was written. For example, I'll give a little tiny spoiler here. At one point, the killer actually becomes, I guess, a part of the military junta or associated with the military junta who took over Argentina in the 70s and 80s, which, proceeded to turn into the Dirty War, which, people were just disappearing left, right, and center, being thrown out of helicopters into the Atlantic Ocean. That really happened. But he becomes a thug who's associated with them. And he actually becomes a genuine threat. So it sort of he goes from the hunted to the hunter almost. And that's a wonderful little twist on the story. But you really can't really do that when you pick it up and it's out of Argentina and stick it in America because they didn't have a dirty war. So that story, that kind of loses its power. It kind of just doesn't make sense anymore. So the remake kind of feels like 2 episodes of Law and Order back to back. Okay, so we kind of have, it's like a 2-parter, maybe like a special edition of Law and Order. Did Siri decide to answer me?
Yeah, Siri just started for some reason.
She's always had a thing.
Sorry, guys.
So
I'm not allowed to talk about the secret war in America.
It really doesn't really. So this one's set in the early 2000s against the background of the war in Iraq. It's a slightly different story this time. Chiwetel Ejiofor plays an FBI officer, and he's associated with the local DA's office in LA. And they're investigating a mosque. So this is set maybe a year and a half after 9/11. And in this case, they are called to a scene of a murder next door to the mosque, and the person who's murdered is Jessica Cobb, aka Julia Roberts' daughter. And that sets in motion the obsession and the story to try and, because he is friends with Julia Roberts, to try and track down the killer and this the same sort of story plays out to a degree, with some unnecessary Hollywoodisms. So Michael Kelly's character in there couldn't quite figure out who he was supposed to be. Yeah, isn't you kind of going, okay, well, look, Chiwetel Ejiofor, he's Ricardo Dain, and Nicole Kidman's this person, but like, who exactly is he supposed to be? And yeah, some of the conceits of his character don't make a lot of sense. Dean Norris is really good value, but he's supposed to be the comic relief character, sort of. He plays a character in the original is called Soledad, and he's kind of his whole gimmick is he works in the office as well, in the prosecutor's office, and like he'll answer the phone with funny things, like the phone will ring in the office, he'll be like, sperm bank deposits. Like, yeah, no, wrong number, goodbye. And they try and pull the same kind of gags of him. This doesn't really quite work as well here because they're like a prosecutor's office in the United States and they would be like totally professional. So it's just another thing that doesn't quite click and make sense. The chase scene, I have the chase scene here, and they try and reproduce the chase scene. Here it's a soccer game in the original. It's at a baseball game here, which obviously that makes sense. But again, 10 times the budget, looks nowhere near as good. Nowhere near as good. Like it's like a photocopy of a photocopy. So one thing that does interest me is the ending of these films is possibly the most effective part of it. And again, I don't want to spoil it in case people out there want to see it. Other than to say that I would be fascinated. It'd be really hard for me to get a copy to you because you can't get it, right? But I would love to see you to sit down and watch it just so I could see. For one reason, you might enjoy it, and that's good. But I would want to know whether your superpower tells you what happened. That would be the one thing I'd want to know. Is it because like I not a trivia machine. I was sitting down, as I was saying earlier, like I was thinking about it, and I was watching while I was watching it, going, I think this is going to happen. I think something's going to happen with this character at the end. What is it? I'm sort of going through the possibilities in my head, and I didn't pick what had actually happened. So, but in hindsight, though, it's very nicely signposted throughout the film, and it makes sense. But yeah, you'd be curious if you could tell. So the one thing it makes it's possibly the most effective. Really ties a bow around the film. So I obviously knew because I watched them both on Sunday. I obviously knew what happened at the end, and the American version obviously took the ending and ran with it. If I didn't know what happened at the end, or I saw the American one first, I wonder if my opinion might be a little bit more favorable. And I suspect it would. I think it's a solid fit. I'm criticizing it very hard because the original is a masterpiece. It's a little bit like, I don't know if you've ever seen Gus Van Sant's Psycho.
Yeah.
The one with Vince Vaughn. It's fine. It's fine. Gus Van Sant's a competent filmmaker. He's not Alfred Hitchcock. And
it's kind of unnecessary as a movie.
Kind of unnecessary,
okay, you just remake it, shot for shot. It's an interesting experiment. But that's all it is. It's an experiment.
This isn't necessarily an experiment, but I wonder if, like, if you saw and no one's saying that Gus Van Sant can't make films. It's just like, it doesn't make sense the same way. And so here I'm like, I guess it makes sense because almost nobody in America would have seen this story. And it was a cool story. But they really haven't nailed the landing on this one. But if you had gone out and turned up at the multiplex in 2015 to see a film and this was on, you probably would have been pretty satisfied with it, I would imagine, if you didn't know there was a significantly better version out there. It's difficult to sort of to square that circle to go. It's competent, but it's nowhere near what the original achieved. And as I said, if you can find a copy, please watch it. You won't regret it. I did actually recommend it to a friend of mine this week. I sent her a trailer, and she said, "Ew, who's got time for subtitles?" This is the same person though who was shocked last December when I told her that I heard Driven was a terrible film. Remember we watched Driven? No, was it just me who watched Driven? I remember telling her that I'd heard the alternate title for Driven was to replace the N at the end of that word with an L. And she was shocked and appalled. She said, I love the movie Driven. Driven's a great movie. I'm like, maybe, maybe if you actually gave some time to the film with subtitles, you would realize that Driven is not a good movie.
I think if we have I think that if there's a third scenario where they say something is good or something is bad and it is diametrically opposite, it is time for the name and shame game.
I wouldn't do that. That's a bit below the belt. It's a bit below the belt. So look, I mean, this one is, on the other hand, significantly easy, and unsurprisingly, is significantly easier to find. You can rent it and that kind of thing on your streaming services. I think it's actually on Netflix. So, you know, if you're really curious,
I shall do. I shall watch the 2015 version before watching the original. See if that changes the palate taste of it at all.
I would be curious. Yeah. So look, I mean, I'm going to continue going down the Argentine rabbit hole again soon. So if you're enjoying it, let me know. If you know of a film from that part of the world I haven't watched it, you'd like us to watch, get in touch. Let us know.
Okay, lovely. All right, that rounds up The Secret in Their Eyes at 126. Lovely. Now I'm going to talk about a new series that has literally just dropped onto Disney Plus, and
this has got Steve Martin in it, right?
Yeah, this is created.
I'm very curious about this.
Steve Martin. It repairs him with one of his best friends in Martin Short, and you also have Selena Gomez in the third point of this this triple threat show. This is an interesting one. When I first heard about this one, I thought it was going to be an interesting concept. And Steve Martin has done some interesting stuff, particularly in his later years, embracing the aging of him. I'm thinking like Shot Girl and things like that. He's an accomplished writer. He always tries to do unusual new things. Martin Short being thrown into the mix is, I feel like he's very much a love him or hate him actor. And when he's on, he's really on. When he's off, he's really off. So it's a bit touch and go whenever he's involved with something. And then throwing in the unusual connection of Selena Gomez with these two much, much older generation comedy legends, because they are comedy legends. You kind of think, okay, how the hell is it? What style? What genre is this going to be? And on IMDb, it's got this listed as comedy, crime, drama, mystery, and thriller. And the first 3 episodes have released, and I've watched all 3, and they're relatively short episodes. They're I think about 35 minutes long each, or something like that. It's not long. It balances those genres rather nicely. It starts off just introducing these 3 characters and their personalities very, very clearly. Steve Martin plays Charles Hayden Savage, who is a former successful TV detective, Brazo, sorry. And he's talking and waxing lyrically about New York, and gets stopped by these people, and this guy just sort of like starts going, "Oh, you're that guy!" He's like, Brazo, "Yeah, Brazo, me and my dad used to love watching you." And then the guy just goes off on this tangent, starts talking about how his father basically has no memory, it's difficult to breathe, he's in a home, and everyone in his family wishes that he would just die because it would be more humane. And it's like, what the hell? And Steve Martin's character just goes, "Oh, would you like a picture?" And so he goes, "Oh yeah, great." And then they flip it straight away. So, and then the guy talking and his girlfriend, they pose, and Steve Martin's character is like, "Oh, I thought you wanted a picture with me, but sure." And he just takes a picture of them. It's just kind of an interesting take of a character and subverting expectation. And we get introduced to Martin Short's character, who's Oliver Putnam. He's basically a washed-up theatre producer and director, and he's very flamboyant and living this life, and they're all in this one building called the I think it's called the Arcadia or Arcadium. It's sort of very deluxe apartments largely. His character is shown as like being much more upbeat and positive about the world and kind of going off into these flights of fancy, and then he just gets honked at by a car and it's like brings him back down to earth. So you get an idea of how he perceives the world and what kind of character he is. And then you have Selena Gomez, who's dressed up as a typical young woman in New York, and so like, she's saying everything's about me and everyone's looking at me, whereas the other two have very much depicted that no one looks at them anymore because they're old, because they're forgotten. And she is this young, attractive woman, and all the guys are talking to her, all the girls want to be her, and all of that stuff. And there's an element of the Rodriguez Tarantino 4 rooms kind of thing going on here.
Wow.
Because it basically all takes place in this hotel, and the catalyst for these 3 very obviously antagonistic to each other characters getting together, we see them all share an elevator going up, and it's awkward, and Martin Short is trying to engage conversation between the 2 of them, and no one wants to have a bar of it. They are all fans of a podcast, a real crime podcast thing. And it has the voice of Tina Fey as the narrator for the podcast. And then the power, someone pulls an emergency fire alarm in the building, so everyone has to vacate. And they all bond in this booth in a restaurant near the apartment, and they're all kind of talking about it and getting excited. Going back to the apartment, they find that someone has died in the building, a man by the name of Tom Kono, who you get a brief shot of in this one scene where all 3 of the main characters together. He gets in the elevator as well, and he's very much depicted as an asshole. And these guys, all budding independent detectives, because they've got this true crime bug, and they decide to try and investigate because the police are saying, oh, it's just a suicide, and they keep on having these little ideas of why. And Martin Short decides he wants to try and make a bit of money out of this, and he starts recording everything to make his own true crime podcast. It's an interesting show. I don't know if I like it yet. It's mildly
How many episodes
funny.
have you watched?
I've watched 3. Yeah, about 30 minutes, 35 minutes.
But you don't know if you like it yet.
It's endearing. I am a big fan of Steve Martin, so I'll always try and support him where I can. And the thing that makes this show kind of difficult to recommend is that at every single turn, it subverts your expectations. And narratively, storytelling, that's really bold, really brave. They do it all really well. But it is also kind of frustrating. And the slows, like the metaphor of peeling away the layers of an onion keeps coming up, especially in the first 2 episodes. And that's what they're doing throughout this. And they're doing it really well. You are learning a lot about these characters. You are finding these endearing elements about them, and you do start to care for them. But at the same time, it keeps on turning left when you're expecting it to go right. And it plays with that so liberally, so frequently, that you are kind of constantly felt like a little bit off balance. And not only is it doing that just narratively with the way the story is going, but also with the genre that they're playing with. Like, there's scenarios where they're talking, and then Steve Martin finds a cat frozen in a freezer, and it's really funny. But at the same time, the sort of the build up to it has been this. It's been an unusual kind of jumping from genre to genre to genre in the same scene. It's like, okay, I really don't quite know where we're at with this, but I'm kind of enjoying it. The characters are more or less enjoyable, and I do want to see what happens. And the premise is really good. And at the end of the episode 3, we are introduced to Sting, the actor, performer, the icon Sting. He lives in the apartment block. And it's going to be curious to see how that comes in, because I don't think I've seen him on a screen since the last time I watched David Lynch's Dune. And I'm curious to see
he was in Fire Walk with Me, wasn't he? David Bowie was in that. Was he not in it as well?
That was Bowie.
Yeah.
I didn't see him in it.
Okay, no, I'm obviously wrong.
Yeah, it was Bowie. So it's got a lot of interesting things, but I don't know. I feel like this is going to be a series which, to get a genuine feel of how successful it is, you're going to need to watch the whole show, which is going to be a put off for a lot of people. So I don't see this. I doubt that it'll be successful enough to get a second series, if that's what they're hoping for. But I think that it could end up becoming a bit of a cult hit for people who do watch to the end. And if they do keep the quality going and they do manage to tie everything together and bring everything to a successful ending, it could be really good storytelling, because it is just doing something very different. And because a show like this is coming out on Disney Plus, granted it's on the Disney Star, the more adult side of things, but it's still an unusual take. And I do appreciate that, especially coming from Disney, having something that is more of a risk. It's not your typical show. It's not your typical, like, Steve Martin and Martin Short have not really been big name movie stars for decades at this point. And they've given them a show. And
Just to note, this was made for Hulu, not Disney. I know they own part of Hulu. It's weird though, right? Because like other things that are made for Hulu are showing up on Prime. Like Nine Perfect Strangers is made for Hulu, but that's on Prime. So it's kind of hard to draw a line for it. So that would probably explain it, because it wasn't Disney who made this. Hulu is a separate entity, which is has a different identity than Disney Plus. But obviously, with their Disney Stars service now, they might tend to leverage that relationship they have with Hulu to actually pick up more of that adult-oriented stuff to fill the gap in between seasons of The Mandalorian.
Yes. But so taking all of that into account, I really don't know if I would recommend this show, because 3 episodes in and I'm still unsure on it. It's endearing enough, but there's plenty more to watch and to spend your time doing. So I don't know if I can recommend it yet. Hopefully by the end of the season, I was like, this is awesome. It ticks every box. It does really well, but that's a lot. That's a big time investment. And most people won't have that kind of dedication. They'll just try once and bounce.
It's probably worth noting that you're probably in the minority on being mixed reviews. It's just the people who are rating it on IMDb, at least. It's got an 8.8 out of 10 on IMDb. So the people who are bothering to rate it, as we note that the people who do vote for shit on IMDb necessarily aren't always the best measure of things, but they like it. And in terms of the critics, I'm not sure, but it's I'd be curious to see what the long-term future of this is, because I mean it looks like something that's quite interesting. I'm keen to take a look, and as we've noted, I will not be buying a subscription to Disney Plus just for this. But there was a connection actually, because there's a guy we talked about who was in Mannequin 2 is in this series. I can't remember the actor's name. The guy who plays Herman in Herman's Head. The
main guy.
Yeah.
Mannequin on William Ragsdale.
Yeah. He's in one of the episodes. And he plays the character Herman from Herman's Head. So at least the character's got the same name as from Herman's Head, which I assume is a gag. Just to be clear, according to Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 100% critic rating and 99% audience rating. So, George can't recommend it, but I think those numbers, people should give it a go.
Yeah. I didn't realize those numbers. Wow. Okay. I just really appreciate it because it's trying to do something different, and that is rare in this industry.
By no means am I saying Rotten Tomatoes is something you absolutely have to rely upon. I think it's just if something gets that kind of consensus, because you get 90%, like all the critics will say Star Trek Discovery's genius, but the audience hates it, or the vice versa. The critics didn't like Alita Battle Angel very much, but the audience enjoyed it. So, but to see almost 100% across the board, I think that's probably a heads up. But this is something that critics and the audience are relying on. Worth having a look, especially if you have a Disney Plus subscription. You're not going to pay extra for it. So,
I will say the Martin Short in this show over the first 3 episodes, he shows so much depth and range and gravitas in his role. I can't help but wonder, what if he had shown more of this earlier in his career instead of just focusing on comedies like he so liberally did? If he had taken on more serious roles, because his character in this has got wonderful depth, and Martin Short just really plays it so heartbrokenly, and you really feel for him, and it's absolutely wonderful. He's a genuine, I feel like it's a genuine missed talent. He didn't do the Robin Williams thing of doing those dramatic or chilling roles, because I think that he would be fucking terrifying in a straight bad guy role kind of thing, or a killer, a psychopath role. The range and the depth and the performance that he puts on in this is genuinely impressive.
You've probably shown it before. I think a film like Inner Space, going back a very, very long time now, where he was almost leading man in that. While he wasn't a bad guy by any stretch of imagination, it was certainly a step outside the usual comedy, stuff that he was known for.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just sort of like that kind of role that you suddenly go, shit, really? That's Martin Short doing that? That's Ned Niederlander? What? It's just such a wonderful change of pace for him, and the facade that his character puts on through this, whenever he's in a public place, when he's not on his own, is very much what you see. What you have seen of Martin Short in so many of his movies and so many of his cameo pieces. He's loud, braggadocious, flamboyant. But it's those moments alone that just, you suddenly see this deep, mournful entity that's so much more interesting.
It's a candy reminder of that these actors are still really talented guys, and they shouldn't be forgotten just because they're in the latter stages of their life. They're still can produce really, and I think that's true of a lot of the films we talked about. With Redford from a film from 3 or 4 years ago, and he was great in that. So don't write people off if they want to keep working.
Yeah, absolutely. If they're willing to push the boundaries and show new sides of themselves, 100%, let them do it. And I'm curious to see. I hope that this continues with the quality level that it is on display here, because it is something really special. just personally, the way that it tells stories, I don't know if I would recommend it, but that's not a denouncement of negative things at all. It's just, I don't know how many people are going to love this. So it's just a challenging watch.
99% of people, apparently. 99% of the audience have said they like it.
There have only been 3 people.
Again, these are the same people who, who voted for Ghostbusters as being a freshly rated film. And these are the same critics who think Star Trek Discovery is good. So take it with a grain of salt. A lot of people think it's good. George, not so much.
Mm-hmm. I'm leaving judgment for how good it is going to be.
You're right. Sometimes it'd be difficult, like a little bit like Nine Perfect Strangers, which by the way has a 59% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Wow. So that should be taken.
Maybe
they
mixed up the ratings.
Well, it has a 63% audience score, so apparently I'm in the minority. Well, sort of not really minority, but not so much of the audience like it as much as much as they do Only Murders. But it's certainly, as I sort of said earlier, it really comes down to how Atlanta sticks the landing. If it can stick the landing with a decent ending to the story, the story is telling over a series, then, overall, I think you can really take it to another level. By the same token, doesn't matter how good some of these mystery stories are. If the ending's stupid, then go back again to Wayward Pines. I was so entranced by Wayward Pines. And then the ridiculous ending, you're like, oh, sorry, I'm out.
Yeah. It for a lot of shows like this, so much of the show does end up just, can they stick the landing? And if they can't, it sours everything. If they can, it elevates everything. I guess that's probably one of the reasons why we don't get too many shows like it, because it is a gamble. And I feel like a show like Loki, for example, they attempted to do something similar. And to a certain degree, WandaVision as well, where they tried to do different forms of storytelling. And for you and me, WandaVision was great, and then they did not stick the landing, and it soured it quite a lot. For Loki, for me, it tried, and it didn't destroy the series like the ending of WandaVision did for me, but it still wasn't enough, and it was more the same problem that weighed down Age of Ultron, where they're serving too many masters and going, you've got to forecast everything else that's coming for the next 5 years. Sorry, tough luck.
Cool. Well, I'm going to take a look at it, so I will be able to hopefully give people a little bit of an update on what I think of it next week.
Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that brings us to the end of the show. A relatively short one for this one. But
brisk episode this week.
Brisk, hour 45. But we talked about this week's chain movie, which was The Discovery, which is available on Netflix, and we both recommend that, with the warning that it has got very, very tough subject matter. So just if you are of a sensitive disposition, please be careful. Make sure that you are looking after yourself first and foremost. Travis has chosen to follow Robert Redford to his directorial Oscar-winning movie, Ordinary People. I gave a little bit of a tease for this week's episode of What If, which we will go into more detail next week when Travis has watched it. We had a little bit of an update of mine on Brand New Cherry Flavor on Netflix, which I do recommend. Travis talked about The Secret in Their Eyes, the 2009 and 2015 remake version, and certainly the original, as is so often the case, was the preferred choice. And lastly, I talked about Only Murders in the Building. Well, we had a bit of a packed show, but we kept the pace going.
Well, we try to cram it in for you guys. Like, we watch it so you don't have to.
Exactly. But I think generally this week, everything that we watched, we recommend.
Oh, you're a bit iffy about a bit iffy in the last one. So we're not all, it's not all sweetness and light here at our end.
It's true. That's true. Well, if you're in Australia, if you're in lockdown, it's definitely something to watch. It's not wasted time.
You've got something better to do.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode. Next week, Ordinary People, What If, as well as a plethora of probably more Argentinian movies. And if we're lucky, yes, because so far they have been très good.
I am picking the good stuff, though, right? I'm not exactly going to see, I'm not actually exactly picking out, the Andy Samberg, Adam Sandler, the grown-ups version, Jack and Jill, the Argentine version,
You do need to find one of those. You do need to find one.
Okay, done. We'll work on that.
Sure you will. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll see you next week. Good night.